thank you very much. I sound like a job hopper, but the source for that is out of date. I need to go clean that up.
Okay.
I'm a former member of the Arkansas Lottery Commission, so I can play the games now. Sorry for giving you bad information.
That's all right.
Thank you to everyone for coming out and giving your time, expressing your interest on such an important issue. The League does an amazing job. I've told this story before at a League meeting, so forgive me if you've heard it. But as a small child, my mama would bring me to Washington County League of Women Voters meetings. And I suspect that's part of the reason I'm still involved in public policy and government, because of the exposure that afforded me. And the other meetings my mom and dad took me to as a child. But y'all really do raise awareness and bring attention to local issues of such importance. I work for the Northwest Arkansas Council, and those of you that know some of our history, we've been around 23 years, and we've been working on a lot of infrastructure issues, airport, highways, different hard infrastructure issues. But 4 or 5 years ago, some of our members started paying real close attention to water. And some said, well, you've always worked on hard infrastructure. Where's the interest in water coming from? And the members quickly said, the water, our water resources, the lakes, streams, tributaries, they may be our most important piece of infrastructure. I bet these panelists would agree. If we don't maintain the quality, preserve the quality, and be considerate of the quantity of water that we have in our region for both families' use, for recreational use, for business use, we don't worry about those issues now. That key critical piece of our infrastructure won't be with us for the long haul. And so we've been focused on this now for several years, but we're really just kind of tinkering around on the fringes, it feels like. We are so blessed in this region to have leading organizations and incredible minds and talent working on water quality and water quantity issues. And I look at the panel and I'm just in awe of the talent that's up here. And I'm excited for y'all to get to hear from. So I'm going to shut up. Other than do an introduction, I'm going to read a brief bio for each of the panelists. And then the format, as I understand, is each panelist is going to present for a few minutes. And then at the end, we'll open it up to questions of all the panelists. So if you've got burning questions, write them down and try to remember them as we go. Is that right, Marietta?
Yes.
Okay.
Karen.
All right. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let me do this. I'll do the quick introductions and then we'll start. Dr. Brian Haggard has been director of the Arkansas Water Resources Center at the University of Arkansas since 2008. He also serves as a professor in the Biological and Agricultural Engineering Department. He's currently president-elect of the National Institute for Water Resources. His research focuses on how human activities at the landscape level influence water quality and chemistry of streams, rivers, and reservoirs. He's been working on water quality in these watersheds for over 20 years, collecting his first water samples in 1994. You don't look old enough. So, Dr. Brian Haggard. I'll do all the bios. Okay, Dr. Delia Hawk is Executive Director of the Illinois River Watershed Partnership. She serves as Secretary-Treasurer of the American Water Resources Association Arkansas section. In 2011, Dr. Hawk was named Educator of the Year by Arkansas Water Works and Water Environment Association. She serves on a community board of directors for Arvest Bank and is an adjunct graduate faculty member at John Brown University. Delia holds an MBA from the Walton College of Business and a doctorate in higher education from the University of Arkansas. So welcome, Dr. Delia. And then next on the panel, I guess we're proceeding to your right, John Pennington is the Executive Director of the Beaver Watershed Alliance. For the last 7 years, he was a Washington County Extension agent conducting watershed outreach and education in Washington County, Arkansas. He also serves as the chair of the Lake Fayetteville Watershed Partnership, vice president of the Ozarks Highlands Trails Association, and secretary for the Arkansas Earth Day Foundation. He received a bachelor's in biology from Arkansas Tech University, and a Master's in Science from the Crop Soils Environmental Science Department of the Dale Butler School of Agriculture at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. So John Penny. I told you there was a lot of talent up here. There's a lot of degrees up here too. Okay, and then at the end of the table, all the way to your right, is Angela DeNova. She's the Arkansas Projects Manager for Ozark Water Watch, a nonprofit organization focused on water quality monitoring, support, and outreach in the Upper White River watershed of Missouri and Arkansas. Angela coordinates the Lake Smart Landowner Outreach Program and the Stream Smart Volunteer Monitoring Program, each in the Beaver Lake watershed. Angela has developed graduate research studying phosphorus in stream bed sediments. She received a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental and Soil Science and a Master's in Geography with focus in water quality from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. So, anyway. You agree this is a powerful panel, right? You're ready to hear from them. So, okay. Go ahead, Dr.
I can't give a talk without a PowerPoint. That's what happens when you're a professor at a university. And I don't think I'm the only one who brought one. So. Okay, so my job here today was in 15 minutes or less to introduce to you two watersheds, not one. Usually I get to give a presentation on one watershed. I have to introduce to you the two important watersheds that we have here in Northwest Arkansas. Define for you what type of ecosystem services these watersheds provide to our community, and then also go over what are the priorities and issues in all these watersheds. So strap on some seatbelts and let's get going. So how are these watersheds similar or different? They're adjacent watersheds, right? Their boundary is, we're actually really close to their boundary right here at the Fayetteville Public Library. And you have a map here, and this is the Illinois River watershed. This is the Upper White River Basin, for those that don't know. You can see all of these points here. These are points in the streams where water samples are being collected every week. Matter of fact, a grad student was out this week collecting water samples at these sites. And you can see we have some located in the Fayetteville Metropolitan Complex. To orient you, this is 540 right here, and this is that urban corridor that's right at the fringe of these two adjacent watersheds. They are both in the Ozark Plateaus and Boston Mountain ecoregions. The water in the Illinois River flows to the north and then flows to the west to Oklahoma. You have Osage Creek that comes in, the Barren Fork down on this side. And so this is a transboundary watershed, as we're well aware of, where the water in Arkansas flows to Oklahoma. The White River is not all that different. The White River flows to the north and then bends a little bit to the northeast. The Kings River the same way. This basin here, it flows to Missouri. So one thing these two watersheds have in common is they're both transboundary watersheds. The land use in the Illinois River is 13% urban, and that includes urban, suburban, and transitional areas. Those are the areas that are being converted into urban areas. Agriculture, it's 50% agriculture in the watershed in Arkansas, the Illinois River watershed is. Most of that is pastures and grassland. There's a really very little, if any, row crop type agriculture in northwest Arkansas. Forested area, the Illinois River is only 36% forest. And so when you add these two things together right here, there's more than 63% of what I would call human-dominated land use in this basin. And only about a third of it is forested. And so that's one thing that really characterizes the Illinois River watershed. To contrast that with the Upper White River Basin, it's 9% urban, but 7% of that is the transitional lands. that we're talking about. So it's not fully developed yet, but it is 9% urban. Agriculture, representing pasture and grasslands, is 25% in the White River Basin, whereas forest is 63%, almost the exact opposite of what we see in the Illinois River Basin. The White River, for us, is dominated by forest. And so, in terms of thinking about these watersheds, Illinois, we kind of think in terms of conservation, and maybe in the White River, we might think in terms of preservation. And again, that urban corridor that represents 13% of the land use in the Illinois River watershed, it's right here. And you can see this trend right here of the urban areas, the major urban areas in the White River Basin. So what are the ecosystem services provided by watersheds? And we're just going to go over this in general, and then we'll get into two watershed specific. The most important ones that I think of is related to water supply and moderating weather extremes. Watersheds do a great job at moderating how we are influenced by drought, how we are influenced by floods, and providing us water supply. All living things need water of a certain quality. Another important ecosystem service is refugia. This is the habitat. This is the place where all the animals, the fish, everything like that can exist within the watershed. And important specific services is biodiversity, lots of different organisms, it's plant pollination, it's biological dispersion, both aquatic and terrestrial. Another important ecological service is what we refer to as waste treatment, and I would actually even throw in the water wastewater treatment. So it's waste and wastewater treatment. We have effluent discharges in both of these watersheds. Non-point source pollution. And we need to be thinking in terms of watersheds in these natural areas. These are natural best management practices out there that can help clean the air, that can provide nutrient cycling, that can provide these riparian processes can increase water quality in aquatic habitats. And maybe one of the most important ones that almost everyone values is the recreation and aesthetic values of these two watersheds. And this information here was pulled from the Ecological Society of America, their ecosystem services fact sheet, so I've got to give credit where credit is due. And when we look at this, we really have all 5 of these same ecosystem services in each watershed. The degrees at which they're used might be different, though, might vary across the watershed. And so in the upper White River Basin, when we look at refugia, recreation, and aesthetics, there's condos all over for rent all around Beaver Lake. Very scenic. My wife and I spent a weekend up there, and that's a picture of us on Beaver Lake right there. Boating. I don't have a boat, I have a kayak, but boating. Lots of people. Think about the economic power of the tourism that water brings to this area, as well as the trout fishing downstream. You can see my son here playing in a local urban ditch, little 3-year-old back there. We didn't get a 404 permit, so hopefully this is being recorded. But we built a small little dam in the stream, so he could get in there and play. And so, as a family, we value the water in northwest Arkansas. Refugia, the habitat for aquatic and terrestrial organisms. A picture of the Illinois River. You Google Illinois River and hit images, and you see nothing but pictures of people canoeing the Illinois River and rafts and people fishing. And so these are with the ecosystem services that are valued, and they're valued for the same reason in both watersheds. But the users might vary by location. The fishing spot here with the smallmouth bass are caught, that's a local secret. I'm not going to share that right there. I might share it with John Pennington now, just since that's within his watershed. But when we look at how water supply and waste treatment varies across these watersheds, we have the Fayetteville West Side wastewater treatment plant. Water supply, quantifying how much water is in our streams. Corps of Engineers, hydroelectric power, how much water and how that water is used. And it's actually a congressional mandate, how Beaver Lake is actually used. It's not controlled by us, it's controlled congressionally. You have the Paul Nolan wastewater treatment plant. Beaver Water District, it's a water supply. And then when we get to the non-point source issues, the 2 dominant ones that we often speak of is the coupled poultry production and beef cattle farms. And the nutrients that are imported from the Midwest in the feed to grow animals in northwest Arkansas. And then, let's just be honest, the manure is left behind. And so there's the loop, the nutrient cycle there is broken. So these watersheds have to be able to manage that. And these two ecosystem services are really at the heart of our management decisions within these watersheds, as well as the water quality issues that we have. And we look at how water supply is impacted in the White River Basin versus the Illinois River watershed. Look at the list here. 4 different water providers use Beaver Lake. Beaver Water District, Benton, Two-Ton, as it's affectionately known, Carroll Boone Water District, Madison County Regional Water District. Whereas in the Illinois River, at least on the Arkansas side, not going downstream of the state line, on the Arkansas side, Siloam Springs uses the Illinois River to supply more than half of its water to its residents. And then let's contrast that with how we view things in terms of wastewater treatment in these two watersheds. We have the city of Fayetteville, NACA, Rogers, Springdale, Siloam Springs, other smaller facilities that discharge into the Illinois River Basin. And a much shorter list that discharges into the Beaver Lake Basin that we're most concerned about. You know, we have the city of Fayetteville, it splits its effluent discharge between the two watersheds. Huntsville, Eureka Springs, not in Beaver Lake, but further downstream in the Kings River, West Fork, and the West Fork's probably going to go offline and start pumping theirs, I think, to the city of Fayetteville. And so, essentially, one of the things this sets up for us, which is really unique, is we have an unregulated interbasin transfer of water. We are consuming drinking water from the White River Basin, and we are releasing it as wastewater into the Illinois River Basin. And so that's an interesting twist in how these two watersheds are really connected. And so what are the major issues? Illinois River is phosphorus, right? That's what we constantly hear about. There was a lawsuit filed. The lawsuit actually included 8 things. Does anyone know what the other 7 are? I can name them. I'm sure Delia can and some others can. But, you know, the center of the issues has been around phosphorus in water, elevated phosphorus concentration. Municipal effluent discharges. They've been affected by the EPA and NPDES permits and how EPA approves the permits as they're written by ADEQ. And so that's a mechanism that's been regulating how much phosphorus gets into this basin. You know, 10 years ago, we had the first statement of joint principles and actions where the mayors agreed to make all these changes. Arkansas enacted all these regulations. And what did we see? Well, we saw phosphorus concentrations from the year 2000, right in this time frame, and this graph just goes through 2008, they've been declining. Phosphorus concentrations in the Illinois River have been declining since then. What happens after that? Well, we end up with a second statement of joint principles because we're not quite there where Oklahoma wants us to be with regards to their total phosphorus criteria. And from this second statement of joint principles and actions has formed a joint committee appointed by the governors of the states of Arkansas and Oklahoma. And the purpose of this joint committee is going to be to elicit a stressor response study to look at the relationship between phosphorus and nutrient and nuisance algae. And it's also got to consider other things like habitat hydrology and how those can influence water quality. When we go into the upper White River Basin, what issues does that scream to us? It's drinking water. This is what we all consume in Washington County, really, when it comes down to it. The majority of us consume Beaver Lake. We drink it every day. That's Amy Wilson's slogan, right, for Beaver Water District. You drink it every day. But what are the issues that we have there? Well, obviously, water treatment is something we're concerned with. You have algal growth and total organic carbon concentrations in the water column. Why are those a concern? 2 reasons. One is disinfection byproducts, and that has a regulatory twist. And the other one is just simple taste and odor problems. Our water, if you've seen, there's been a public service announcement that was released, I think, just last week from Beaver Water District. The water tastes a little musty right now. I've got a filter on my refrigerator. I don't even notice, but you know. But if you're drinking straight from the tap, you can tell a little bit of a must odor. You know, from the water treatment, another issue they have to deal with is removing the solids out of the water. And what do they do with those solids, those water treatment residuals that they produce? There may be some things that we can do to beneficially use those, because those solids can bind up a lot of phosphorus. Maybe there's a tie there between Beaver Water District and the Illinois River Basin. And the regulations that we're coming about in the Upper White River Basin, you have the Beaver Lake Chlorophyll A criteria, which has been proposed and promulgated by Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality. I'm not sure if EPA has actually approved it yet, but you have a criteria, a numeric criteria for fluorophylate, NW, and that's related to non-point source pollution and effluent discharges. There's been a lot of stir recently in the state legislature and also locally about minerals, and that's how that is influenced by the effluent discharges, because the effluent discharges, they release a lot of dissolved material. And so they impact and change the TDS concentrations of the streams. And all of that relates back to EPA's drinking water standards. And again, the secondary rule on disinfection byproducts. And these really, really small amounts of these disinfection byproducts are allowed in the finished drinking water. And so what priority does each watershed serve in your community? Well, one thing I always like to do as a scientist is say, I like to make decisions based on data, right? And my wife gets mad because I don't make decisions based on feelings. I need data to make decisions, right? And so, but I think the interesting thing about this panel is you have the three speakers following me that deal with all the stakeholder groups in both of these watersheds. And those are the people who are making decisions based on data and based on personal feelings and desires and their own values. And so I can't really tell you how to value these two watersheds. That's up to you, and I think you'll hear how these watersheds are valued by the different stakeholders by the next three speakers. Thank you.